Oh, you can't give away that mouse mat. It's a piece of foam. Steady, and go.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Deep Trout Spinners with Miles and Gary. How you doing, Gary?
Yeah, I'm not bad. Just busy. I mean, Miles and I speak before we do the show, and Miles asked me how I was off air, and I started to give an answer that was more than 3 words long, and he literally said, "I'll stop you, Steve. You're boring me," which he always does, like from The Office. He has no interest in how I am, so it's a rhetorical question whenever
It's complicated your life because it involves a lot of essays and big words and
Yeah, but I know, but a lot of
like wind turbines.
Wind. I'm doing a lot on Danish wind energy.
Let's not get into that again. I don't think
Danish
anyone's
Auntie
interested.
Nora. Yeah, how are you? How
I've
are
been
you,
watching a
mate?
lot of the Fast Show recently.
Oh yeah, well they did that sort of comeback, didn't they? And it was
Yeah.
not comeback; it was just a one-off introduction to their old episodes. And I've seen part of it, and it's
They hold up
yeah,
so well. Just those shows, the short, sharp sketches, and you realise like how like groundbreaking that show was. The fact that a sketch would start and then it would just sort of end, like obviously the fast element of it, but it would often just end like mid sketch. Like that was such a brave thing to do, and obviously you're reminded of that time, like how much interest and work was being made, like in the 90s, and how much more sort of frivolous kind of budgets were and like TV productions. It was just so. It was a different time.
Do you think they were the first? I mean, you're probably right. I've never thought about the first to kind of do that. What I would call ad absurdity to the just trying to be funny in sketches. What other sketch shows were there before that? I don't think there were ones doing. Big Train was very absurd and brilliant with it, but the Fast Show I think is
It's the better show.
but it's a better show. But Big Train, I can recommend.
We've often said like because sketch shows kind of the whole kind of thing is like moved online, isn't it? It's, you think of it like short form, like mobile content that you watch like when you're on the commute or something. Like those shows don't really get commissioned anymore. You know, it's the Michelin Web thing. I think that was kind of the last thing. I know like there's been a few like rubbish ones, like David Walliams and Friends and rubbish like that.
But James Corden and Matt Horn, who are both individually very talented, did a really shit one. But you're probably right. Sketch shows, aren't commissioned as much because everything we watch is done as a sketch now. Like if someone's got a sketch idea in their head, they just put it on Facebook, and some of them get in the millions of views. Some don't get any. If they're anything like my tweets, they don't get any distance or any. But it's it's a shame because we both like sketch comedy, and but yeah. So anyway, to come off that, are you okay in general?
I've also been ironing now because a lot of my shirts now are creased.
Now
you know what I'm talking about.
You're 30 years old.
It kind of did give me some satisfaction to wear a shirt that didn't have a crease or that fold in the middle, and I felt a bit new for the moment.
Ironing is one thing I don't do. I just do not iron unless it's a funeral. I don't iron
for special occasions. No, but otherwise, no, we're all good. I'm excited to do this podcast. And I'm excited to do this episode, which is episode 32, 29th of March, 2003. Ricky and Stephen are adamant that Karl should appear on the show's poster, and more interest groups are offended. I'll put a link to the relevant episode in the description. So do check it out and come back for the debrief.
Welcome back. Hi, how was the show? Did you enjoy it? We're going to discuss it now. Let's sort of twist the usual format, and I'm going to ask you. I did this last week as well, but what are your initial thoughts of the episode?
It's not my favourite, if I'm honest. There's bits of it that I like, but definitely one that I wouldn't like choose to listen to. There's good bits, like this is the first cheeky freak of the week. This is the end of Cheap as Chimps as well. Like it's ending because it's not.
It's the ending. The beginning was last week. So it's not like a long-running feature, but
I wish you would have done more Cheapest Chips. I love that one, especially this one when he talks about their website. I don't want to give it a plug about these poachers, Carl. Zoos have got bored of them, and it's like
I love that line. It's very subtle, and it's just a throwaway line. It's like, what, zoos have got bored of them? Like, just the thought of that, zoos getting bored.
I wonder what website was he on though to find out how much.
I've often thought of that because I've looked online to if I can buy a tiger or something, and it doesn't seem to, not because I want one, but because I'm sort of validating what Karl did. But crazy website. But R.I.P. Cheapest Chimps. Maybe I'll iron my shirt for the funeral.
The Chinatown chat is great, and actually I think that's probably a thought that a lot of us have had. Like you want it to be more impressive than it is, and you go there and it's just a road with some restaurants. And okay, they've got like the Chinese lanterns, but like Ricky says, you want to hear a gong and
and it is funny because there is a few betting shops as well. There are a few betting shops because I've been there.
Steve, in another episode, he goes up. Some tourists came up to me because this chat comes up time and time again, and he says, some tourists came up and said, "Can you tell me the way to Chinatown?" He said, "I couldn't be bothered." He said, "There's nothing there. Don't bother. Go to Garfunkel's, have some delicious sausage and mash."
Go to Garfunkel's. That's a great. That Ricky laugh is one of my favourites.
Have you ever been to Garfunkel's? Seriously, has anyone? Aberdeen Angus Steakhouse and Garfunkel's. Don't know anyone that's ever been to any of those. They're everywhere.
I've been, so you do know someone.
Have you? What the Aberdeen?
I've been to Garfunkel's. I went with my grandpa.
What would you go?
I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. I didn't choose, but
Pizza Express shut.
It was, and also with my ex-girlfriend, who isn't Daisy's, another ex-girlfriend, went to the Aberdeen Angus Steakhouse. It's true, honestly, and the service was terrible. We were waiting for literally half an hour, 40 minutes for each course, everything, even a drink, took so much time. So at the end, instead of leaving no tip, I left them. I found 3 1-pence pieces.
You are joking.
I left 3 1-pence, and I tell you this, I have never done that before, and I was doing it because I'm aware of how insulting that is. It's more insulting than leaving no tip. But I wanted to insult them. Yeah, but they were terrible service.
They're definitely not going to sponsor this podcast now. If you're listening, Garfunkel.
Well, they've got enough money because they got my 3p's, which is with inflation is probably worth 4p now. So, but yeah, this was going back 10 years. But yeah, they weren't impressive. Anyway,
that was Gary's thoughts on Garfunkel's.
Next, I'll do a chain restaurant every week. There's a different chain restaurant.
Talking about offending people, like in this episode, Ricky sort of makes a throwaway remark at it, and he says like so many interest groups were offended this week, like Chinese people,
Welsh
women, Welsh people. Don't put the Welsh in twice. Is one of the best lines ever.
Yeah.
So quick. Elvis fans of great music. And I actually did put a tweet out which was asking people what do you think would cause like the most offence, or like not just this show but for all the shows, like what do you think is the naughtiest thing they've ever said. So we'll get to that later in XFM in the community.
Good. That's a good. I thought you were going to do it now. That's perfect because you want to keep them hanging. So we're also coming up our favourite quotes, which we always do. But so we've got
Chinatown chat. You kind of think it kind of verges on being a bit naughty, until when Karl gets in touch and says, "Few things annoy me. If you're gonna have a Chinese restaurant, don't have one where there's loads of others." When you go to Chinatown, you're like, "There's just too many. You can't. If you decide on one, what's the best one?" Like, especially now when you're like, you get really obsessive when you look at restaurants, don't you? You always check like the ratings, like how good it is. Yeah,
I did. I went to Chinatown a few months ago. The last time I was up in London, it was just at the beginning of COVID, and it wasn't there's nowhere near anything like it was. People didn't realise. So I was kind of thought, I'll go to China. Genuinely, I thought I'll go to Chinatown to show a bit of solidarity with the Chinese community because they're being like people who are abusing them and things like that. But anyway, it's fine.
You stood next to a Chinese gentleman, and you went also had to, and then you went, all right, I'm with you on that one, Mr. Yang.
You and me, and I'm hand in my heart. But no, it is hard to choose. But I went into one, sat down, and I was like, "Can I have chicken chow mein?" He's like, "We don't do chicken chow mein." I left, and then I went to another one. As long as they do chicken chow mein, I just chicken chow mein. Anyway, it was good. I like it. Karl's thought that why, if you've got a Chinese restaurant, don't put it where there's other Chinese restaurants, is kind of, it's an understandable kind of thought that, it's not like a really outwardly stupid thing. But Ricky is totally right. It's obviously a community. Like, you have the Chinese community, you have, I know I'm not being flippant here, but you have the gay community very close to them. They are interchangeable and not one homogenous sort of group, but communities like to kind of be based near each other, so that's why you have the restaurants near each other. But I agree with him. It's hard to choose, but you just choose. You just go and choose. I was actually looking for one when I was up there with dead ducks hanging in the window, not because I ordered duck at all or I have interest, and there were some with some dead ducks hanging, and I nearly went in those ones, but I didn't. But
and then you went to Duck's Tongue, the proprietor, and you said, usually I put my good stuff in the window.
Usually put my good stuff in the window. No, Carl's very good in the Chinatown bit. He's just, everything he says kind of hits on the mark.
Especially the lard thing when he says, talking about the little wooden shoes. He goes, there's always oil and lard in the.
Yeah, they use water. It's quite specific. They use water, which that wouldn't kind of get rid of the lard. That's one thing about Chinatown I haven't noticed that they say is I've never noticed the lard on the floor. Have you?
Well, I've never seen like a block of lard.
No, but it's not a lot. Like, it's like.
I know what you mean. Not really. I can't say that was a particular thought, but I do feel it is pretty underwhelming. But then I don't really know what I was expecting, like a red dragon.
The first time I went to Chinatown, it was overwhelming. It was massive. It was a huge thing because I was very small, and again, it was with my grandpa, who I went to Garfunkel's with, on a different holidays. But it was kind of huge. But it's only really 2-3 streets, Gerrard Street and a couple of other streets. But obviously we're being quite UK centric here. If you do live in other countries, actually, I'll be interested, because almost every country has a city in it, at least one city that has a Chinatown, because the Chinese community have gone far and wide, which is a great thing. The Chinese lads. Chinese fans. But I just wonder what the Chinatown is like in your area. Let us know.
What a specific request.
I know, but we're here to make specific requests.
That's like Ricky at the end when he says, "Do we want to know what happens at a bar mitzvah?" It's like, do we really want to know that? Do we care about that? You get some insights into what it was like to be Ricky in his younger days, and he's talking about his fashion disasters, isn't he? Like the bullshit sweatshirt, painted on the lapel, a little acid.
Yes, it is interesting to get insights into Ricky's past, because I think Steve and Karl kind of talk about their pasts more openly, actually, than Ricky. Now, it's not that Ricky doesn't do it; he just doesn't do it as much in these shows, and he does do it, as I say, but not as much. And it's always nice to get a little insight into Ricky's kind of, not childhood, but kind of formative years. Because he had that completely different career in Shauna Dancing, and you think, how does someone in a sort of that kind of music duo that's so specific end up being the biggest comedian in the world, or even a comedian, so.
Well, I think Ricky's like someone that was like just genuinely quite a lucky person, like in terms of the opportunities he's got, like obviously being the events manager at Ulu, and then moving into XFM and all the work that went with that. I think he managed Suede at some stage. So and then obviously to make a telly show when you're like 36, 37, 38, I can't remember how old. He is quite lucky, but obviously you do have all those years in your 20s where you don't really do anything. You just like get by and you sort of live on the dole and you sort of, as he did, but he does. Yeah. He's got like a few recycled anecdotes when he does talk about himself, like in other. He does
talk about himself from time. I know. I wasn't saying.
He talks about like the caravan story of his nan and living in that dank flat in London and urinating.
I like this. It's kind of hopeful, a hopeful message that he was kind of, in terms of media, nothing. And then he went from nothing to so much in his sort of mid-30s, which is quite rare. But I wouldn't say he's lucky. He might have had some luck to do with timings and things like that. But basically, he's earned everything he's got. He's 100%. Earned everything.
There's a big part of the episode that doesn't swing me, to be honest, is the complaints discussion. When he's talking about like what's the most offensive thing, and it was Anne Robinson putting the Welsh, and also the baby Jesus. They don't really land for me, but
it's not the most interesting chat for me. I I promise you, hopefully listeners know by now, we don't just agree with each other for the sake of it, but it happens on that one. I do agree with you. It's not. I don't find anything of that offensive. If that's what you're saying, you find it, but I just don't find it that funny. It's just not that funny a chat. It's like when they're talking about boxing before, in previous episodes, the boxing chat, it just doesn't do it for me. It's not. I find it okay. I find the episode overall. It's probably in the top third, but it's the lower end of the top third. If for me, roughly. That's
the things, the sort of springboards from the complaints chat are really funny. Like when he talks about his dad retiring in Wales and him nicking from phone boxes. I'm amazed.
That's a classic.
Yeah, that's a great anecdote, and that they bring that up time and time again, don't they?
Yeah.
But it's the idea that there is such a thing as a phone box. But I think people were doing that in COVID, weren't they? When people would leave. I think it was in Brooklyn, and they left fridges out in the street with food in, so people could just grab food if they wanted something to eat, because people were struggling to go out.
It's natural human instinct that in every, as Karl says, in every bunch you get a little snidey one, or but he doesn't quite say it, but it's true. There are people who will always take advantage of stuff like that, and it's very sad, especially when it's for COVID. I didn't realise that happened, but I assume you were going to say that people then stole the food and just took the whole fridge.
It would be hard not to do. I mean, I probably would.
No, I'm saying human nature. Most people wouldn't, but there are people who would. Yeah, it's kind of. Luckily it's not something that I experience too often. I don't tend to leave my food on the street outside just for the sake of it, because I've got no one to give it to, because I'm all alone. So no one leaves me food. I don't leave anyone food. That's the
Gary's gonna do a competition for a new housemate coming up.
If you got a razor, that would be good. Shaving off the beard.
Do you want to know what are the most complaint shows from off?
Well, so Mars has done a bit of preparation now. I can tell. I'm going to guess now. Am I? So is this in the UK?
Yeah,
possibly, maybe something to do with Susan Boyle.
It's not a bad guess, but number one was Celebrity Big Brother, when Jade Goody and Shilpa Shetty, when they had that.
Oh, when there's
that racist cat.
Did she say the N word?
She said like she couldn't speak properly and should fuck off home.
Oh.
Oh, and she called her Shilpa Poppadom, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because Jade Goody was actually quite a divisive figure, wasn't she? I mean, she's.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about Jade Goody, because I did watch Big Brother when she was in it. Back in those days, I was an avid watcher of Big Brother. So was I. Yeah. She's done things like that racist that I cannot forgive that kind of thing.
No,
but I was really defensive of her, because there's people I know who were saying she's and she's like trying to get as much money as she could before she died for her children, by doing interviews and things. She's just seeking the publicity. She can't get over the publicity. I'll say she's literally dying. She's just getting money for her children. So actually I did find, like, she obviously has been through something and she's not here anymore that she didn't deserve to go through. So I have mixed feelings about her, but she's an interesting kind of character. How did we get onto Jade Goody, by the way?
We're doing the most complaints.
Oh, the most complaints. Okay, well, you should have done them in reverse order. That would have been the professional thing to do. That would have been what Gary would have.
That's why you should have done this feature.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't do features.
Do you know what number second is? Do you know what number second?
What's the second?
Petergeddon, the Brassey episode.
Oh, right. Yeah. But it was one of my favourites.
That was one of my favourites. That's
Dr. Fox sitting down saying, and I was going to say something like, it can come through the screen and the hand can grab you, or something like that. Like,
no, they said paedophiles have got more in common with a crab.
Yeah, but
crab sitting there. And then there's a few more, like there's something called Ghost Watch and Darren Brown's Seance.
Ghost Watch, I remember.
Julian Clary's fisting joke.
Yeah, it was one of Lamont.
That was great. I love Julian Clary.
But to do that at an award show, and actually, when you see an award show and you've got a celebrity audience and there's someone on stage saying something funny and they cut to the audience and the audience are laughing, or they're not laughing. Sometimes they're not. If they're laughing in a certain, they're just laughing up to a point. But I have never, when you go to the cutaway, Martin Clunes is amongst these people. I've never seen an audience laugh so much as they did at Julian Clary's fisting joke. Because then he said because the Chancellor has a red box that he delivers the statement in.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's important. I know you're drifting off already, and then Julia and Clary's next line, which is often which is often forgotten, was talk about a red box after the fisting line, which is, I know we're getting a bit naughty here, but we're only doing it, Julian.
It's not the worst joke in the world. It's a good.
No, but to do that on.
I know. You forget, when you talk about like complaints, it is weird that XFM never got any complaints. They had that one upheld one about saying
we don't know if XFM didn't get any complaints at all, like XFM in general. Maybe other shows did get.
Oh no, I did a little bit of research.
Oh, he's sorry. He's still in his prep. I didn't realise. He's embarrassed me.
This is what someone on the Reddit thread said. I do recommend everyone goes to the Reddit thread. If you're a fan of the show, you can find those memes.
All the Reddit threads.
But more importantly, you should follow @Spinners Podcast. That's better. Yeah, someone said it all falls down to how each individual station responds to Ofcom complaints, which are not particularly powerful in the first place. XFM, for example, along with Kerrang, never took such complaints seriously, whereas Radio 1 received complaints during a similar period and immediately stamped out the problem, if indeed there was one. Secondly, hardly anyone would complain about the Ricky Gervais show due to the fan base and listeners knowing exactly what kind of drivel to expect from a Tim Pot radio.
That's very true to both those things. The first point, actually, we interviewed Andrew Phillips. Check it out. Actually, it's episode, I think, about 20, something around then. But, you just get the vibe of Andrew Phillips, from interviewing him, that he wouldn't have taken those complaints very seriously. And he didn't say it specifically, but you just get that vibe. And the second thing is, if you put the Ricky Gervais show on Radio 2, just one episode, just out one week, it would be hugely complained about. But that's the other thing about complaints, is that a commercial radio station like XFM can kind of do what they want within a certain context,
Yeah. Commercial station,
but the BBC, well, technically the BBC could do what it wants as well, but it will always choose to pursue complaints very actively and be like, oh, we're going to stamp this out straight away, because that's just the way the BBC are, and it's, God bless them for it, but they're just different.
I think when it comes to complaints, or you think about what happened recently with the proms not playing the. I mean, it's ridiculous. That is such a mute point. It's such a non-point, and everyone believed that for the wrong reasons, and that wasn't actually the case. They said they weren't going to show it because it's usually meant to be performed with a full audience, and it'll be ridiculous. But once you plant that seed that said, oh, it's because they're anti-patriotic, it's like, no. Why don't you do a little bit of research? Why would anyone? It's such a non-point. Why?
It's so sad.
Yeah.
Irrelevant people, or people who are sadly relevant, but people who, like, say, I'm not just talking about the Farages, he's obviously one of them, but he is relevant, sadly. But the sad, pathetic, little irrelevant people who all go through life seeing themselves be put down by other people and by other things, and they're not, but they see it, they see conflict at every turn. Everything has to be personal almost to them. They want it because it's patriotic, so the fact they're not doing it is definitely because they don't want to be patriotic, and it's against me personally. And they're sad little people who think that, and sadly there are lots of them. And they kind of, and the BBC is often used as a pawn in things like this that to do with patriotic and anti-patriotic things, and in memes and in all sorts of things. But the BBC, it gets that reputation partly because it did deal with complaints, and it does deal with complaints too forcefully probably, but that's a minor criticism. It doesn't mean it's unpatriotic or anything like that. It's just
there's no social media back then, but now obviously that was a particular story that would have been trending for weeks and weeks, and there would have been loads of news stories online about it. And I think people are more easily offended now because of, I don't know, maybe woke culture. I mean, that's a whole other debate now.
We've kind of had a bit of that debate on another show, but I think are people easily more offended? It's easy to say that, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but people might take offence now. But people anatomically and physiologically and psychologically are the same people as they were 10 years ago. Nothing's kind of changed, so they take as much offence as they took previously. It's just, I think more people are less reluctant to say they take offence, maybe. But it can't be that more people take offence to things, because people are the same people. They're not life-changing things.
But context changes, doesn't it?
The context changes, but the people don't. What I'm saying is, if you're taking things that are roughly equal, one in 2003, one in 2020, why would someone be more offended in 2020? They're the same people. Obviously, the context changes, I know, but anyway, it's just maybe that's a debate to have for another show. But do let us know your general thoughts, apart from more specifics later that we'll come to on the episode. Let us know if you liked it. I kind of, it's not one of your favourites. It's not one of my favourites, but it's not a bad episode. Certainly, I think we've reviewed worse so far. But as I've always said to you, Mark Commode is the one who said this first. If he is film reviewer in the UK, he always says if a comedy film has 6 laughs, it's done really well. So it's a good film.
Well, and it counts as a comedy if it's got 6 laughs.
Well, no, he says it's a great comedy as well. It's a really good reflection on it. So even the ones that aren't my favourites, like this one, still have great moments. And we do our favourite quotes during the show. I've got 3, 4, 5, I've got about 11, which I'll have to edit down. But so there are still very funny moments in it. And if you take it and compare it to most radio shows, it's a great show. But if you compare it to the rest of their body of work on the Ricky Gervais show, it's not one of the better ones, no. But
it's got a great songs of phrase that my anti-headwind for 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes. Yeah, I mean the songs of phrases. Maybe it's up there only my favourite feature, because he does it so well. Like even the one where they actually really properly have a go at him, and it's really unfair, which is coming up in a few weeks when there's a lot of tension in the show anyway. It's like, my neighbour had a horse in the house. I just love Ricky's. What was that? This is brilliant. This. No, it's not. He says, I love that episode for all the right reasons. It's great. But we'll be coming to that in the next few weeks. Stay tuned. Should we take a little break?
Yeah, I think so. That's a natural pause, I'd say, for the next section.
Yeah. Thanks for talking through your thought process there. Maybe leave some of that hidden. Shows a bit of class. But anyway, go on. You do what you want. And so you basically just experience that break almost real time, because usually we do have a break and we do some things. But Mars said to me, should we just get straight on with it? Because I've actually ordered some food. So
I've got some fish and chips on the way, Gary. I've got, priority.
So we almost didn't have a break, but I don't know how to cope. Aren't I required to have a 15-minute break by law? No, where he talks about Prince and he says like he played for 3 hours, didn't even have a break, and then Ricky's like, imagine having a break, just sitting having a coffee, saying I've got 10 minutes by law. But no, we didn't really have a break, and as I say, Mars has got his food coming. And actually, the minute Mars said the word fish and chips to me, he said it off air. I thought I want fish and chips now, so I might the fish. I thought, do you know, I've spent so much money on Deliveroo and
oh
Uber
my god,
Eats.
so the money that you would have spent down the pub, you just end up spending
the money that you wouldn't make. You save
by going to Deliveroo. I have had a few little socials this week actually. I love when people say with this rule of 6 now. And they said you can't go to the pub or any social gatherings with more than 6 people. And I was like, I didn't even know 6 people.
Yeah.
That is not something that is going to affect me at all. I can tell you that. It says, at most maybe 3.
Yeah, unless they bring in a rule that you're not allowed to go to the pub without anyone. That's the one that's going to, like, you've got to have company, or else you can't go to a pub or you can't go to a shop or restaurant. That's the rule that will kill me, because I do everything on my own.
Well, I don't really go to the pub on my own. Like, I would do it, but I don't think I'm there yet.
Yeah, if you're listening from another country, Mars is referring to new COVID laws that are brought in that you can only have 6 people in a sort of bubble.
I'll tell you why though, brought that up, because why I don't want to go out with more than 6 people is because you think that you're not going to run out of conversation, but when someone produces a deck of cards that you're in for a particularly torturous evening.
This happened to you?
Yeah, and it's just like we went round to someone's flat after going to the pub, and we were like still talking now and then, like, oh, we should play a game. And the moment someone says that, I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, forced
And they
fun.
forced fun and playing cards. I hate. If I was to do Room 101, playing cards are going straight in there. Hate them. Hate games. Hate magic tricks with cards. Hate drinking
You know
games.
my number one for Room 101? Miserable bastards who don't like card games.
You would not enjoy that.
No, I wouldn't enjoy it. I agree with you. I am that miserable bastard. But I've had some fun with cards. But in general, no. Not if I'm on a night out. Not if I'm having a drink and things.
Yeah.
You know, I like, as you know, I like going to the pub with one or two, three people max. You know, and as you say, which is a good line. Like, I don't even hardly even know three people, but I do know people. But I wouldn't like to get two sort of different groups of friends together. I just want to be with one sort of section of friends, whether that's one or two people. I just want a small group. I'm too old now to have. I used to go to a pub with like lots and lots of people at once, and it was a busy pub, and it was noisy, but it's fine, you know, and I could hear everything. But now I can't hear.
You're gonna get tetanus soon or something like that.
Yeah, we will. Well, I was thinking
We're sounding a lot more like Karl Pilkington when he goes, "Friends are annoying."
Yeah, friends. I know. We are, but he's saying that he never do anything with more than six people. Does he say
true.
Six people? And that's is absolutely true. There are some wisdoms and jewels in Karl's stupidity, and that's one of them. And it's not all being miserable. I will maybe it is, but I am miserable then as well. But yeah, so Mars, you've had fun with cards this week. What game did you play, incidentally?
A game called Spoons.
Okay.
It's like
Does it involve holding each other?
It's like Snap, but with more than two players, and it was just unbelievably bland. Because I get quite competitive if I'm playing a game.
He does.
And I get annoyed if I don't win. But it's annoying when I want to be able to take part, but I hate cards.
But I can imagine you like being there. I'm just imagining it right now, and I bet you. If there was a fly on the wall or an outside observer, they would say and you ask them who was the most interested person in the game of cards. I bet they'd say you, because I bet you portrayed yourself as being incredible.
Oh yeah, I was an absolute joy.
What did you say at the time? Ray Bentos.
Anyway, welcome back to the D-Trout Spinners podcast with Mars and Gary, or the Miserable Bastard Experience.
Bastard Express show.
You had some thoughts you wanted to add?
There was a couple of things. They're only minor things. When he's doing that ski, you know, that Superman. Yeah. That is Superman. That's very nostalgic for me. Is it in Superman? I can't remember, because we used to go to Butlins or Pontins.
Oh, same. Yeah.
And they used to play it all the time, especially the last night, which is why I like Ricky's story about the redcoats and them crying when, you know, it's the last night, because I can kind of relate to that as well. But we used to do the ski, do. I can't remember the words or the tune, but we used to do that, so that's quite nostalgic for me.
No, it was Superman. Superman, because then they had "I am the music man, I come from far away and I can play."
Yeah,
do you remember that?
Yeah,
they had a really weird song as well, Black Lace, called "We're Having a Gang Bang."
What?
And it was like, the lyrics were like, "We're having a gang bang, we're having a ball, we're having a gang bang against the wall." Yeah, it's
really
so weird. But Black Lace, they're quite family friendly, aren't they?
They didn't play that at Butlins.
Maybe they did in your parents' room, though. I don't know.
No, I don't think there's any banging going on. That's a whole other story for another day. But the only other thing I was saying was like they were talking about Karl's being on the poster, I think, or getting his photo. And just think, there was a time before we know. When you're listening to these shows now, we all know exactly what you can picture. Karl Pilkington, literally speaking, we can picture exactly what he looks like. But for the listeners at the time, and because it was pre kind of mass internet, imagine there being no photos of Karl. It's a weird thing to put yourself in a position where you're taking away some knowledge that you've got that is so fundamental to that is so obvious to you now. But there was a time before we knew what Karl looked like, or anyone knew what Karl looked like. So if you were a listener at the time, you might think he's fat. You'd have imagine listening and having no idea what Karl is. It was just a little point, because it's kind of it puts you in a place. I always remember because we both love radio, and particularly enjoy radio, and I listened to a lot of shows on TalkSport. Actually, around this time when you often ask me what I'm doing that particular week, it probably would have been listening to TalkSport around those times, like 2001. I discovered it. And I remember when I eventually found out, like, if I've been listening to a show for a while, I found out what someone looked like. And it was such a freaky experience. It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize they look like that. Like, I cannot believe that. And with Karl, it would have been the same. But we all know him now and know exactly what he looks like. But there would have been
it's a different level of fame as well, isn't it, when you're on the radio? Because it is quite exciting hearing that recognizable voice as opposed to seeing someone. Because I remember the first time. This is sad, actually. I do actually remember the first time that I was introduced to Karl Pilkington, and it was that DVD extra, the Meet Karl Pilkington on the Politics DVD, where they.
What do you mean sad? That's not sad.
It's like, yeah, but I'm talking about key moments.
Sad that you can remember it. Yeah.
And they go through like key things like race, disability. That's when he comes out with these like absolute diamonds, like you never see an old man eating a Twix. Chinese don't age well. Then he brings in his little book, his FHM freak book, and it's got the little fellow with the aging disease. I've never, having no previous, no understanding of who he was. I didn't know that he was involved with the radio. I just knew it was just a DVD extra. But I just was in absolute stitches that whole time.
Yeah.
I've never found anyone so funny as that. That's such a great clip. I'll put it in the bio so everyone can.
Yeah, I mean, I was introduced to him in a similar kind of way. It was like a talking head thing, and it was Ricky and Steve comedy connections, and Ricky and Steve were the subject of the show, and Karl was just a talking head. So it wasn't as funny as the extras thing, I know, but it was kind of introduced to him in that way. But what I mean, most of us listeners, I think, and it's very different being introduced to someone in that way. So you see them and you hear them. But when you're introduced to someone where you just hear them, now these days you could hear any radio show and Google and you'll get an image of someone straight away. But there's very few shows where you have that experience where you listen to someone maybe for a few weeks, months, and you don't know what they look like, and then you find out. But as I say, I think most of the listeners to this show, and certainly us two, we were introduced to Karl sight and sound at the same time, and it's just a little point that it's very different when you're not introduced to someone in that way. And in those days, it wasn't like ancient times, but back in those days it did used to be like that. If Karl hadn't put a particular photo out or wasn't on the poster, there was no other way to see him. So, and it must have been strange. It must have been strange because, again, a lot of the listeners say he's fat or say they think he looks fat, and it will be a shock for those listeners and any listeners to actually see Karl Pilkington. But we'll never have that shock because we saw him and heard him at the same time.
His look is so central to his comedy as well. Not just what he says, but his expression, the way he looks.
That's what I mean. But there were times no one even knew what he looked like. Now every single person knows every single person who's aware of Karl Pilkington knows what he looks like. Whereas back then, everyone who was aware of him, everyone didn't know what he looks like, and it was a much, much, much smaller amount of people. But none of them, literally none of them, other than people who worked at the station, knew what he looked like. Yeah. So it's just, and it's more a point about radio. Like, we'll never kind of have those times again because there's Googleable images of people, everyone, I don't, except us, I think. But yeah, but Shall we come on to our favourite quotes?
I'd love to, yeah, love to.
I'm going to start off because I know you'll probably have this one, and this is one of my favourite ones to say, and I tried to write it down as Ricky says it, and it's almost impossible to put the punctuation in because you can't and Mystica dropping in.
Yeah.
We often exchange that between ourselves. And Mystica dropping in. He kind of drops his words as he's saying it. I just love it.
Well, to snowball on that one, I've got I've got an amusing sketch about a fly.
That's good.
He's got that classic Ricky slur.
I've had a habit in favourite quote section for the last few weeks to read out a quote that just because I love the way Ricky says it, and Mystica dropping in one of them, but more when he goes into his high pitchedness, and this is one of them. When will you learn?
That was like last week, wasn't it? You turned it off. It's good. Oh, Rutherford doesn't get to look in with Genesis.
Genesis, I've actually got that. Oh, you can't give away that mouse mat. It's a piece of foam.
There's always lard on the floor.
Could I have half a pound of those sweets, please?
Of course you can. They are so strange, those places, aren't they? those.
And again, Rick is so good at kind of immediate. He's got a lot of depth of knowledge and the things, subjects he knows about, but he's got a lot of breadth as well. Like they mention those places and he instantly puts together a little sketch in his head that he doesn't even do it in his head. He's doing it ad hoc as he's speaking, and it does sound like one of those places. He can kind of instantly do that about most things, and
I think they're all equally good at improving. Like even stuff on the podcast, when they do KP plumbing, like that's so great. And so he goes, because Ricky will just give you a role. He'll go, okay, you own the business. Okay, what you do? Blah, blah. And they set it up so quickly. Same with fangs but no fangs.
Yeah, well, I disagree with you slightly. And actually, not all of their things hit for me. Not all of them are hits. Like they do this one about anti-war being, and you need a war. I just don't think that works. But those ones were definitely planned. The ones they do at the very beginning of the show are planned, but the ones they do right in the middle of the show aren't planned. And there's some really good ones. But I still maintain, I disagree with you slightly. I think Ricky is better than Karl, because Karl's not a great ad-libber like that. He's great at an anecdote, but not improv. Steve's good at it, but Ricky just has this habit, even when it's just one word or one line of how a character that suddenly has been introduced in some way would have said it. He's so good at that. It's so underrated. It's kind of one line, whereas Steve I don't think can do that. But anyway, it's good. So this is a joint one. So it's Karl, then Ricky says something, and then the rest is Karl. So, well, I don't know. You're an idiot. Postage and package included.
It's good. I don't really want to blow all Earth, Wind and Fire before 10. All of
That's
that.
An interesting chat about them being DJs.
I've got Bicycle Race by Queen lines up, and I've got Cliff Richard who won't talk anymore. That's so brilliant.
We were talking about the episode in general, as we always do earlier, and we didn't really mention that, but I quite like their chat about DJs in general. Not just that.
I like that.
It's quite interesting because they've all kind of had a different experience of it. We've done normally put your good stuff in the window. That's like a classic quote that will live with the episode forever. Let's have a look. You only had a very small part though, didn't you?
Oh.
Let's go.
God. Well, I tried for ages to try and find his credit in that Internet Movie Database.
Yeah, it's not that. It's been obviously corrected.
Donald McIntyre's still got Cheap as Chimps as one of his credits on his Wikipedia page.
Does he?
Yeah, it's true. Someone's obviously changed it. My last one. There's clips of songs. What are the artists? Email in. Karl getting annoyed that no one's getting his songs a phrase.
Oh, yeah.
He's just so blunt, because you would be furious though, wouldn't you, if you found the songs, you've edited them together, it sounds really good, and no one fucking takes part.
But that's how I can empathise a little bit with that, with tweeting sometimes. But this is my I love this quote probably more than any in this episode. And let me say, I know it's sad, but I don't know what my next sentence is. That should be the end. That's a great little thing. That's so true. It doesn't, I know it's sad, but we should play it anyway. No, you don't know what your next sentence is because there's nothing justifiable whatsoever that you can say. And
exactly.
As you said, that should be the end. And that's the end of favourite quotes.
I was going to do that.
I did it.
Excited to say that.
We're fiercely competitive on this show with each other, and we have a lot of arguments off air. You don't hear them, but no, we don't. Really. So now it's time for our final feature, which is XFM in the Community, where we go through your feedback that you sent in each week. And this week, I'll say, just as a little preview to it, I've had some very nice emails, feedback. So thank you so much for getting in touch with us. Mars will tell you all the ways you can get in touch. I don't understand technical stuff at all, but
yeah, those ways to get in touch are Spinners Podcast on Twitter or spinnerspodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, we love hearing from you. We love your tweets, emails, especially, if you've got your favorite quotes or stories or anecdotes or first one
that you're mildly interested in. I think if we set the bar at mildly interested, we're likely to get a lot more emails. If you say love, there's very few people who are going to love it. But
The first one is from Daisy Harvey. Daisy's a DTRLT. She actually coined the phrase DTRLT. So thank you so much.
I didn't know that.
She did. She should get some royalties or a cut of the profits, really.
We've actually lost. So we've split the debt we've incurred by doing this podcast with Daisy.
Okay, she says, I know you joke about not having any listeners, but I'm a big fan of the show, and maybe one day I'll even listen to the Dutch or Otherwise episodes, which are
Thanks.
also available on all the
Yeah.
ways you get your podcasts. Sometimes I think Steve gets a bad rep for being mean in the show, especially when talking about fat people, and Ricky comes off as nicer. I think Steve is partly saying it as a setup because Ricky always feigns being nice and saying you can't say that, but always follows it up with the same, it's glandular. No, it's not. It's greed joke. I think it's worth noting in the early shows that a few times Ricky and Steve sing together, and it's a great example of them at their best. I also wondered, do you think Carl's parents ever met Ricky and Steve? My two favourite quotes ever from the show are Steve talking about World War II's tapes he got and his dad saying, never forget, son. I don't remember, Dad. The way he says it always makes me laugh, and every time and another, I'm sure everyone loves it. Ricky, after hearing about Shed Saren. You are joking.
You are
Love,
joking. Yeah.
love the show. Thank you, Daisy. Lots of good
Thank you,
thoughts in
Stacey.
there.
Really, really interesting email. I think that one thing I think, which is when you say Steve does get a bad rep for kind of having a go at fat people, I think it's one of those things I sometimes think is that, and I'm being careful here how I say this. I'm not saying Steve is. I don't really use the word, freak or anything like that. He's not. But when you have a physical, you are physically made up so that people are sadly going to take the piss, even your friends, even your closest friend, Ricky Gervais. You look abnormal in some way. And I'm not saying he looks terrible, but he's so tall and so thin that I think you are naturally going to take you're going to kind of, it's more acceptable for you to have a go at how other people look because you've had so much stick for the way you look in life. Anyway, that's slightly separate. But well, yeah.
So to be honest, everyone's said things that they regret, and those times usually happen when you're younger and you're probably a bit more ignorant. And I would happily kind of let Steve. We have spoken about this before, I think, because I don't think he's got a bad word to say about anything, and he probably would regret a lot of those things he said anyway. It seems like quite a good time to pick it up actually, because on Twitter I asked the spinners, that's what I'm calling them, this week the lads discuss upheld complaints on TV. So the question is, what do you think is the most offensive thing that's said on the show? And we had a few people get in touch. Craig says, but I'm just saying, right, why not give them their own toilets? That's definitely something I probably think, yeah, you definitely wouldn't get away with that now.
No.
This one's from Alex Shaw. Steve suggesting that toilet attendants should get an illegal job mini-cabbing so he doesn't feel uncomfortable. If you make Ricky nervous, you must be close to the bone.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with Ricky is like Ricky plays these two roles, and both these roles are completely opposing to each other. So he will be absolutely the one who says the most offensive things and puts stuff out there, and also like leads Karl up the path to say the most offensive things that he could possibly say, when he could have managed the situation differently and tried to get Karl off saying that. I'm glad he did do that, by the way, because it's led to some comedy radio gold, which we all love. But Ricky also is the first one to say, oh, you can't say, like, he's the first one to play the role of like, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can't. Oh, no, we can't go that. You can't say that. Like,
well, they do that at the end of this episode, don't they? When they go, just what he called her. Spotted.
Yeah, I know. Oh, that's Ricky at his worst. Yeah, but that is Ricky completely encouraging Karl to say something he doesn't want to say. He really doesn't want to say.
The Wernan blog, who they're the sort of fan podcast of The Office and Extras. Good, it's great. Give it a listen. They got some great guests as well. So they don't try anything when you're sleeping. That was the quote from Nicholas. It says, if you've got a gay friend, can I make another suggestion? That's the most offensive thing we've ever said on the show. When Steve says. Diggsy also brought up the gay men in toilets. Average Joe says, Steve, that's interesting. I'm a big fan of Moby Dick. Oh, yeah, the book Moby Dick. No, the medical condition. There's no innuendo. No, it's a horrible thing that used to swallow semen.
Yeah, that's really... Yeah, they don't do that on the later episodes as much. They're not that kind of, like, overtly saying naughty words like that, like innuendo. But, yeah, so those are interesting... replies to what people find most offensive. I don't know, it's hard. If I was to say myself, it's hard to kind of pinpoint the most offensive thing, but certainly lots is offensive. But I think we all think that they kind of get away with it because they're so funny with it. But just to come back to Daisy's email, because Daisy made the point where she asked if Karl parents had ever been introduced to Ricky. I absolutely don't think they have been. I think that they probably don't see that much of each other now anyway, and Karl certainly doesn't seem to see a lot of his parents. So I don't think they've
Karl
probably
doesn't
met.
even see much of his brother and sister. Says,
Yeah,
popped into a car park, so they brought a kid.
Yeah, I've got this. Get bored after one. But yeah, so no, I don't think they met, but it'd certainly be interesting, particularly with his dad.
Well, I would have absolutely loved a fly on the wall, Osborne's like Life at the Pilkingtons, like Ricky suggested. That would just be fascinating to see. Because, I mean, the Karl's bad, but imagine what his parents are going to be like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you know hints and, about silly things they've done, sawing mattress, etc. Can you imagine how surreal it will be to meet them?
Yeah, it would be weird. But I think in reality, this is just my take on it. I think if that was to happen, if we did see the fly on the wall, even if we went back to what it was previously, it wouldn't quite be what we'd expected. Like, it wouldn't be as crazy. Like, I think everyone does this with anecdotes about things. Well, a lot of people do, including myself. I'm sure I've done it. You embellish. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the stuff about Karl's parents are probably embellished. It probably was a more normal upbringing than it seemed. But Karl was. It's not a criticism that Karl embellished. The fact that he did, if he did, worked for comedy gold. It created comedy gold. But I think it will be more normal than we'd expect. It wouldn't be as quite real and everything.
And also the way you recall memories, and when you retell an anecdote, yeah, you're right, you embellish, but memories also change as you get older.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you remember things differently, and I've definitely got I've probably got about 4 anecdotes in my whole life. I've got a few.
He's saving them for Graham Norton.
But I've got a few, and you're surprised that every time I tell it, they're always different.
Yeah, it's slightly different. Yeah. It's not a lie. You're not lying as such.
No.
You are, and Karl, I don't think is lying. I mean, who's to say? It might be the fact that literally everything he described was exactly the same. But I just get the impression that it probably isn't, and there's some embellishment there. But as I say, we all kind of do it. But anyway, any more feedback this week?
Yes, so we've got one from Francis Cherry. That's a great name, isn't it?
Francis. Now, I'm not gonna pretend here that I haven't heard this before. I have read this, Francis. So before Mars even gets to it, thank you so much for your email, and also thanks to Daisy as well. But really appreciate it, Francis. So anyway, go on. What are you going to say?
Here we go. I'm quite a recent convert to the XFM shows. I discovered them about a year ago and have been completely obsessed by them. It feels like I know every quote already off by heart. I discovered your podcast a few weeks ago and I'm loving it. I love the fact it's a year. Only been a year. You're going to lose a lot more time, Francis.
Yeah, but it sounded like from what Francis is saying there that she listened to all of them already, which I think in a year there's certainly enough time to do so. But I just think I'm jealous of her because, the more you listen, there are certain shows that if you listen time and time again, you need a break from them. But if you're only a year in, you don't need a break yet for about 3 years, But after about 4 years, you need a break. But yeah, she must be loving them.
So I'll go on. You work very well together. I like how you both have different styles of presenting, yet you blend so well together. Thank you. I've listened to a few of your shows now, and you explain your ideas about such as Ricky or the dynamic all of the three of them have in a really interesting, thoughtful way that makes me consider totally new things that I hadn't thought about before. By the way, why did you not start a Series 1? What's your plan once you get to the end of Series 2? I actually love Series 3. It has my number one favourite moment in it, Karl being in Kes. So I kind of hope you keep going now.
I'm with you there, Francis.
So I kind of hope you keep going forwards for now. I can't wait for you to get there. And I'm also really looking forward to hearing both your takes on the episode in this series where Ricky and Steve aren't allowed to do their swearing skit they'd planned. And it's a really tense between all of them. That show is still funny, but also quite dark. And I want to hear your two expert or XFM-spert opinions on it. Overall, wanted to say that I'm loving your shows, guys. Thanks both for giving me a new show I can get obsessed about.
Oh, thank you.
Your shows are giving me almost as much entertainment as the Ricky Gervais shows do. I mean, nothing could ever top them, but you come pretty close, and that's a huge compliment to any podcast. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. There's a lot I didn't read out from Francis's lovely email.
Yeah, and not that, also Daisy, I really appreciate your email as well. So both Daisy and Francis, thank you for your emails. I read them both and very kind, but yeah, Francis, some of the things you say, very, very, very nice. So thank you. It helps to it's sort of like an antidote to the ones that are saying, oh, really, they're trying to be Ricky
Well,
and Steve.
it helps to get Gary off, the balcony. He's about to jump. I said, we've got an email.
Luckily, I don't have a balcony, or I would always be on it. But
I'm joking, but it's so lovely. I'm really pleased that you're getting some comfort from these shows, and they act as a nice companion to your journey that you're going to go on now. So why did we not start series 1, Gary?
Oh, good question. Well, I think we decided at the time that we both know series 1, but I think series 2 is where a lot of people start, and it's more well known, and we know it better. So I think we could do it justice to go, and I think our decision was to kind of go through series 2 if the podcast ever took off, and we're still waiting for that to happen. But go through series 2, maybe go through series 3 and 4, and then revisit series 1 afterwards. But I felt series 2 was a better point to start. Karl talks more. As we know it, it's more of a completed show. Now, it would have been very interesting to start on series 1 as well, and we certainly will go back there. As to Francis's other question, what will we do when we get to the end of series 2? Probably, yes, go on to series 3, 4, and then back to 1. And hopefully we'll be in the double figures for listeners, but by that time. But yeah, no. So anyway, I will say this: Miles is eating fish and chips. I'm outing you on air. He's eating fish and chips as we speak. So he's got his meal. Hope you enjoyed the show, guys. Is there anything else, Miles, you want to say?
No, I think I'm done.
Because there's so many times I go to do an intro, like a polished intro, which is not me. I'm not polished on it at all, and I don't want to be. But I do, and you're like, oh no, I've got this feature. I'm going to play a song. I'm going to do.
No, that was beautifully wrapped up. Can I just say, podcast news, guys? We're going to have a little break next week. We're not going to be doing a show next week. However, the following week, Gary and I will be actually meeting in person. We're going to go for a day out in Brighton.
We have met before, and it sounded like we'd never met then. We haven't met for 6 months because of COVID, but
yeah, so it's going to be quite the afternoon, isn't it?
Quite the afternoon, absolutely. I'm my liver is already screaming, please don't do it at me. But no, it should be good, and so we're going to do a Dutch or Otherwise then, because it's kind of like it's almost a reunion show for us, and we're going to just chat more around what's going on for us. We will be back to doing D-Trout Spinners the following week, possibly by Skype, possibly I might come up to London. I think from now on, once we've met once, we'll be meeting more regularly, but we will still be doing shows over Skype from time to time, because we found it a really useful medium for when we can't meet. So, and the way things are going, it seems like there's going to be some sort of more lockdown of pubs and things. So, and we can only meet in a pub. It's pathetic, isn't it? Like a pub's lockdown. I was like, oh well, the library's open, the park, it doesn't matter.
Libraries.
So we're not meeting. But
what are you going to have to drink?
Same thing I drink every week, brain. It's thinking.
Yeah, I know. A large glass of Hans White wine, please.
A large glass. Although there is a pub in London that we go. Mars took me to, and basically it's quite a nice pub. It's off our way. It's quite a walk, and they don't do large glasses of wine. They only do medium. And Mars loves going to that pub. He's always like, "Can we go to that pub?" Because his rounds cost much less, but I don't get as much wine. So anyway, we're
it's not as bad as the Fences in Farringdon, where every round's 14 quid.
No, it's 14.90 or something.
Yeah, what were we thinking?
We sit in a shed. Literally, there's a shed outside and we sit in it.
I'm looking forward to that. Everyone, do get in touch with us usual ways. Spinners Podcast on Twitter or spinnerspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.